Hello, welcome to the first course on Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG. Today we're going to make a chatbot, or at least we're going to start making a chatbot. Probably not going to do it in one episode, but this is the only lesson that's going to have a slide deck, by the way. I'm not a big slide deck guy. This is the information that is best given via a slide deck, and that's information about what exactly RAG is, why do we want to make it, what's the point of all this, which I feel like is important to talk about. First thing I want to talk about, though, is what this whole course is about. So you might be watching this on YouTube, in which case this is a standalone video, but it's part of a series, a course, and we'll get to that at the very end. I'm not going to talk too much about it right now. Let me talk about this course on how to make a RAG chatbot. So first of all, I want to set the expectations for this course. This course is not designed to give you a shiny certificate to put on a resume. If you put down that you did Jacob Robinson's RAG chatbot course 2025, not a single employer is going to care about that. Let's just be honest, for both me and for you. No one's going to care about that. So what our focus instead is to actually make something, make a practical portfolio project that we can show off to employers, that we can show off to freelance clients who want to use us for making a RAG chatbot, maybe on Fiverr, maybe on Upwork. Or what we'll also talk about is how you can make this more production ready, turn into a SaaS app, and make money on just the RAG chatbot. I am a weird learner. I tried doing the Coursera route. I tried doing the course route, and traditional courses just don't do it for me. So if you're one of those people who I can't really do courses that well, I just want to get my hands on something and build something, I have made this course specifically for you because that's how I am. This course is fast-paced, it is practical all the way, and it is focused on project building, not lecture listing. I know, it's ironic. It's the first episode. There's no way I can describe this to you other than talking about it and having a slide deck up. Fast-paced because it's only 7, I think in the outline there's only 7 lessons to this. We are just building the app, explaining how the app works, going through it step by step. If you prefer slow learning, if you prefer to be on topic by topic by topic over an extended period of time, you might want something else. It is practical all the way, no concepts. Of course, I do feel like there is a place for concepts. There is a place for understanding things conceptually. I think you do have to have that underpinning knowledge. And we do try and focus on more architecture, big, wider views on why we're making this, how it works, what's the best, most optimum way to make it. But for the most part, we're going to focus on practical because, as I've just told you before, that's how I learn. I don't learn conceptual stuff very well in terms of like through a course. I learned that more by learning the practical hands-on stuff first and then kind of going back and being like, oh, so this is why we do it, or I understand why this is the concept behind it. And that's the approach I'm going to take to this course as well. So if you're a conceptual first learner, or you think that, consider you'd rather learn the concepts before learning a practical hands-on application, which of course is the traditional route for most education. Most education teaches you concepts first, application second. You might want to sit this one out as well. And finally, like I said, project building, not lecture listening. This is the only one. The second that I leave here, we're going into the IDE, we're going into, building a flowchart for our architecture, everything like that. This is the only one with slides, I promise. So you probably wonder what Retrieval Augmented Generation is. I don't even know if I'm saying that acronym right. That's not really what's important. Just call it RAG. To understand what is RAG and why we care about it, and why do we want to make a RAG-based chatbot in the first place, let's start with foundations. Let's start with what is an AI at a very, very basic level. Like I said, I'm talking about practicalities here. I'm not talking about super in-depth technical, nor am I talking about like conceptual broad stuff. I'm just saying like to get you to the point as quickly as possible. AI, or an LLM more specifically, or a GPT, whatever you want to call it. What it does is it takes in a wide corpus of textual data. So read books, textbooks, fiction, blog posts, social media posts. I say textual data here, but more AI is becoming multimodal, I guess I should say, where it's also taking in image data and video data as well. But for our sake, we're just going to say textual data, right? It reads every book, every website, everything can get its hands on. Using that data, it trains itself to know the next best thing to say when given a prompt. Back in the day, this used to be very simple. It's literally, what is the next word in the sentence? So very early versions of GPT or ChatGPT, whatever you want to call it, if you use these, you'll know it was kind of just like a fun little tool or game where you can just like type in a sentence and just see what it would say, like the next couple of words would be. That's like a very, very foundational version of GPT. But now it's gotten a little bit more complicated. Now it's not just looking at the next word to say, it's looking at what does this prompt have to do with all the other things that I have learned via this textual data. So the best way I can describe this is through an example. Let's say the user prompts a question, can you give me a good apple pie recipe? The AI then checks its corpus. It says, okay, wait a minute, apple pie recipe. I've read about that before. It goes, and what it essentially does is it'll find anything that is that it has read, that it has in its system that involves an apple pie recipe. So things from allrecipes.com, stuff from, I don't know, whatever, right? Like just general recipe food bloggers, anything like that. And it'll sort of look at the patterns. It'll aggregate like, oh, okay, apple pie is good with ice cream. Apple pie has a crust. Apple pie is, this is a bad example because I don't know how to make an apple pie, but assume that like if you read every apple pie recipe, you would know how to make a damn apple pie. And so what it's doing is it's finding the commonalities between each of these things. When is the pie baked? Well, most commonly, right, because it's finding the next logical word in the sentence, most of the time it's cooked at X temperature and it's cooked in an oven. So I'll mention that in my response to the user, stuff like that. So it's basically congregating all of the knowledge on apple pie recipes, which is really, really good if you're doing something as simple as give me a good apple pie recipe, right? That's very, very simple for an AI to do because there's so many apple pie recipes out there. The problem is a lot of knowledge is not general. It's very, very specific. It has a very, very specific use case. And if you ever have tried to ask a general AI chatbot, something like a ChatGPT or Claude, a very specific question, you might be kind of disappointed because it's probably going to give you a bunch of bullshit. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first thing is that it only knows common data, of course. It doesn't know about your personal life or anything that would be internal. So if your company has an internal wiki, and the reason I bring up the internal wiki is that this is probably the biggest use case for a RAG chatbot right now. A lot of companies are paying big, big money for people to make a chatbot based on a specific company's data because that gives it a much more focused, it gives it a much more focused purpose. Like if a internal, if I work in consulting and I want to know, hey, didn't we work on a project back 5 years ago that did something similar to this? Can you give me details on that? It wouldn't know that information, right? Because it's internal. So it only knows common data. And another problem is that it aggregates and not specifies. This is one of the reasons why AI is very, very, very bad for health. I mean, it's always been bad to get health advice from the internet, but it's particularly bad to get health advice from AI. And the reason is because of its aggregation. Health conditions are something that usually needs a very, very specific answer. It is like you have this exact problem and you need this exact solution. But because of the aggregation sort of pattern matching, pattern recognition system that an AI uses, if there are two similar heart diseases, it'll kind of be combined into one thing. It'll be like, it's the same thing. Who cares? There's enough articles of people talking about both, or there's enough articles where, some people mention these keywords, some people mention these keywords. They're the same keywords, but it's different diseases, and I'll just slop them all in one. There's a very, very recent case. I think it was as of when I'm recording this, like a day ago, 2 days ago, where a guy got bromide poisoning. Is it bromide? Is it bromine? I'm not quite sure. I think it's bromide because bromine's the one that just will kill an entire population of people in 2 drops. He got bromide poisoning because he started taking bromide capsules because he didn't want to have sodium. He didn't want to have sodium in his diet anymore. Sodium chloride. And he said the chatbot said that sodium bromide was the next best thing, and it is the next best thing in certain chemical engineering or chemistry, industrial processes. It's not the same thing in health, because in health, you start taking bromide, you get bromide poisoning, which is a very bad illness. And so the chatbot told him to take bromide because there were so many articles in the chatbot system that said bromide and sodium are the same thing, even though the use case was different. Maybe those articles that it was reading didn't really specify the use case. Like, it didn't say like for chemical purposes. It just was it was scraped from a website that was for chemical engineering, and then the article itself just said like sodium, the difference between sodium chloride and sodium bromide, because that was its specific. Like, it didn't need to mention that in the article. You clicked the website that said like chemical engineering 101 or whatever. So that's an example of where that aggregation becomes a problem. This brings us to both what is RAG and why RAG is important. What RAG does is it starts with a general foundation. So it starts with a ChatGPT or a Claude or a whatever, DeepSeek, whatever you want to have as a foundational model. And then you fine tune it with more personalized documents. So this might be documents about your personal life and what you've been doing, so that the AI knows what your key focuses are. It might be, if you're at a company, your company's internal docs, like I mentioned in that one consulting example. It might be, if you are a health company, you want to focus on a specific disease or something, you get stuff for that specific disease. Any of these different use case scenarios. And what you do is that when you prompt now, it'll give like a higher priority preference to your fine-tuned documents. So it's like, okay, instead of checking my general corpus first, I'm going to check the personalized docs, and then anything that I can't find in the personalized docs, I'll look in the general corpus, is basically what it's going to do. And another case that a lot of these RAG agents do, and another thing that they do, is they will cite the specific document that they're using. So for example, if you've ever used a web search with ChatGPT or web search with Claude, it'll cite the specific article that it's using. And if you use a RAG chatbot trained on your own personal data, I said that weird, your own personal, like the document said you're giving it, although maybe Freudian slip because you don't know what OpenAI has on you really, or Facebook or any of that sort of stuff. The documents that you gave it, it'll check and it'll cite those specific documents. So this brings us to how we're building our own chatbots, because now we know the why. Okay, it's pretty useful. I could train this on my, if you're a student taking a class right now, you can take your study materials, you can throw it in there. If you have, freelance work, you can throw in your freelance contracts in there. You can throw in pretty much anything. And the chatbot we're going to make is local. You can deploy it if you want to. If you want to use this for a portfolio project, you can deploy it to Streamlit and GitHub. How we're going to make it, you don't have to. It can run locally, but so if you want to use like personal information, if you're using it for a portfolio, I'll recommend to use more general stuff. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We're using ChatGPT for our foundational model. ChatGPT works really, really well with RAG, and it's the go-to at this point in time when I am making this video on August the 18th. August the 14th. Wow, I was way off. August the 14th, 2025, when I am making this video. ChatGPT is the big thing. So we're using ChatGPT for this. We will use a specific corpus of documents that's of your choosing. I'll figure out something that I'll use as an example. And we're going to write in Python because Python is the ML AI language of choice. We're going to be using this in Cursor as an AI agent. We're going to go through step by step to explain the code and what the code does. But at this point, there is an expectation that you know how to prompt, you know how to code using coding AI agents. Well, maybe we'll talk a little bit about what exactly these agents are and what they're doing. But we're going to use that to build our foundational code, and then we'll explain what that code does, and then we will debug it, because of course, Cursor code isn't always correct. So we'll have to debug it and turn it from a vibe-coded app into a real, actual portfolio app, which is the ultimate goal of this project. So here are the next steps for us. No matter what, the next step for both the free people on YouTube and the paid people on Gumroad, it is the architecture video. So this will be free. That is our planning video where we explain exactly what's going on and what we'll be doing and how we'll be making this chatbot. So if you then are a free user and you just want to say, you know what, I can just figure this out myself. I don't know, I don't have this sort of money, so I'm just going to figure this out on my own using this architecture diagram plan. You can do that. But if you want to join the course with us, you can actually program it step by step with us. That's going to be $350 lifetime. No, not a subscription. Obviously, I'm not going to charge you $350 a month for a whole thing. It's an initial build, so we set up with Cursor. We'll deploy our architecture. We'll debug because it never runs right the first time. So we'll go through and we'll actually debug step by step. I'll show you what I got as my issues. We can talk about in comments and stuff about what your issues have been and how to solve those. We'll do the final build. So once we finally get all the debugging steps done, we can figure out how we're going to deploy this and everything like that. We'll do the deployment on Streamlit and also as an open source page on GitHub, because of course that's where a lot of these recruiters are looking for your portfolio. And then finally, my favorite one is that we'll talk about the next steps for production. So when we finish the first 6, when we finish the majority of this project, it's not going to be ready for production. There's going to be a bunch of security vulnerabilities. There's going to be a bunch of stuff that we're just trying to make something for a portfolio, so we're not really concerned about it being production ready. But I'm going to guide you in the way of kind of like a second architecture video of what does our production steps look like. And I'll kind of give you not just a technical guide, but a business marketing guide as to how you can then turn that into a SaaS app and hopefully make your $350 back that I took from you taking this course. So that's it. That's the first episode. I will see you in lesson 2, which will be the architecture.